What if everything you've been taught about the mechanics of hard work is just mathematically wrong?
I mean, that's a pretty terrifying thought for most people, right?
Because we are conditioned literally from day one to believe that success is this super simple linear equation. Like you put in 100 hours a week, you sacrifice your sleep, you sacrifice your health, and eventually the universe is just going to reward you.
Yeah, we treat hustle like it's a law of physics or something.
Exactly. But what if how hard you work is actually the least important variable in the entire equation of wealth creation?
Which is a wild concept.
It is. What if the real secret to building this massive entrepreneurial success and, simultaneously achieving a really profound sense of personal peace requires completely throwing out that traditional formula?
Well, it requires a fundamental rewiring, I think. We have to stop looking at raw exertion as the main metric of value, and we have to start looking at things like leverage, self-awareness, and this very specific type of radical patience.
And that paradigm shift is exactly what we are unpacking today. Welcome to our latest deep dive, where we're going to be pulling from a really powerful stack of excerpts from the Almanac of Naval Ravikant, or
Yeah, and for anyone who might not be deep into the whole Silicon Valley ecosystem, Naval Ravikant is this genuinely fascinating anomaly.
Oh, totally. He's the founder of AngelList, an early-stage investor in massive companies like Twitter and Uber and, a self-made billionaire. But what makes Naval so compelling isn't really the wealth, is it?
No, not at all. It's the fact that he's built this massive, almost cult-like following by operating at the intersection of, cutthroat tech investing and deep philosophical tranquility.
Right. He's the guy who will teach you exactly how to build a scalable startup, and then in the very next breath, he'll explain why desire is just a contract you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want.
Which is such an incredibly rare synthesis to find in one person. Because society usually forces us to pick one of two paths, right? You either become the super stressed, hyper-competitive billionaire whose personal life is an absolute disaster.
Yeah, we've all seen those headlines.
Or, you renounce material wealth entirely, you retreat to an ashram somewhere, and you find peace at the cost of your ambition. But Naval's entire framework argues that true wealth and true peace actually stem from the exact same internal operating system.
So our mission today, for you listening, is to really decode that operating system. We want to take these dense, striking assertions from the text and impartially turn them into a practical toolkit that you can actually use.
And to do that, we have to start at the very foundation, which is how you build the mind that actually builds the wealth.
Because Naval takes a radical, almost aggressive stance on education. Like, the text explicitly states that only the things you learn yourself become your unique abilities.
Right. Standardized education, according to this framework anyway, essentially just mass produces replaceable workers.
Which makes sense when you think about it. If you and a million other people learn the exact same curriculum in the exact same order using the exact same textbooks,
you are, by definition, a commodity.
Exactly. And the market does not pay a premium for a commodity. The market pays for scarcity.
Which perfectly explains the highly specific, almost bizarre curriculum that Naval actually prescribes for anyone who wants to build real leverage in the world.
Yeah, let's list those out. He says you need to study microeconomics, game theory, psychology, persuasion, ethics, mathematics, and computer science.
It's quite the list.
It is. When I first read that, I thought, well, this sounds like a weird collision between a liberal arts degree and a hardcore engineering program. Like, why not just study business administration or marketing? Why this specific cocktail of subjects?
What's fascinating here is the architecture of that specific list.
Yeah.
It is essentially a blueprint for decoding reality.
Okay, break that down for me.
So mathematics and computer science represent the ultimate foundations of truth and logic. Math isn't about memorizing calculus formulas for a test. It's the study of constructing flawless, rigorously tested arguments.
Right.
And then computer science is learning how to scale that logic. It's basically learning how to build automated machines out of pure thought.
Okay, so that's the cold, calculating machinery of the universe. It's binary. It works or it doesn't work.
Exactly. But machinery doesn't operate in a vacuum, right? It operates within human society. Which brings us to the second half of his curriculum: psychology, persuasion, and ethics.
The human element.
Right. This is the map of the human condition. Psychology reveals the flaws, the hidden biases, the deep-seated desires of the human mind. And persuasion is the active application of that psychology.
Like how you move people, how you convince a customer to buy your product or get an investor to actually believe in your vision.
Precisely. but I know people usually bump up against the next one on the list.
Yeah, I actually want to push back on the inclusion of ethics here. Because in the context of ruthless Silicon Valley wealth creation, the word ethics usually sounds like, I don't know, a PR buzzword. Is Naval including ethics just to sound like a good guy, or is there a mechanical reason for it?
It is entirely mechanical in his worldview. In Naval's framework, ethics is not about moralizing or being a saint. It is the strategic study of playing long-term games.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because without ethics, persuasion just devolves into manipulation. You might trick someone into buying your product once, right? But you've destroyed the relationship forever.
And the market eventually catches on.
Highly efficient markets ruthlessly punish manipulation over a long enough timeline. So ethics is literally the operational requirement for compounding trust. If you play long-term games with long-term people, the compounding returns of those relationships are astronomical.
That completely reframes ethics for me. It's not a constraint on your business at all. It's an asset that prevents your business from collapsing in year 5.
Exactly. And then finally, we have microeconomics and game theory sitting right in the middle of this whole curriculum.
They act as the bridge between the logic and the humans, right?
Yeah, microeconomics explores how individuals make choices under conditions of scarcity. Game theory analyzes how those choices interact when people are competing or cooperating with each other.
So if you understand those two fields, you basically understand the invisible incentives driving every single transaction, negotiation, and partnership on Earth.
You've got it. That's the core operating system.
So practically speaking, let's say I'm an entrepreneur, right? And I'm launching a new software product. If I don't understand game theory, I might see a competitor lower their price, panic, and then lower my price to match them.
Which triggers a race to the bottom.
Exactly. We both destroy our profit margins, and eventually the business just dies. But if I have taught myself game theory, I recognize that as the classic prisoner's dilemma.
Right. You see the trap.
Yeah, I realize that competing on price is a totally losing game. So instead, I use my understanding of psychology to change my branding, targeting a completely different emotional need and rendering their price cut completely irrelevant.
That is the exact synthesis Naval is advocating for. And notice what just happened in your example. You didn't rely on some prepackaged strategy you learned in an MBA class.
No, I had to figure it out on the fly.
You combined distinct, separate disciplines, game theory and psychology, to navigate a really complex, unpredictable scenario. When you take the time to teach yourself this specific combination of disciplines, your mind becomes a custom-built engine.
You possess a unique capability that your competitors simply cannot replicate, because they don't have your specific intellectual fingerprint.
And that means you are no longer a commodity.
If you're listening to this right now, I really want you to think about your own knowledge stack. Consider the tools you use every single day. Are you relying entirely on the standard operating procedures of your industry?
It's a dangerous place to be.
It really is, because if you are only reading the same industry blogs and using the same standard software as everyone else in your field, you are competing on a perfectly level playing field. And in Naval's worldview, a level playing field is exactly what you want to avoid.
You want a massive, unfair advantage born from your own self-directed curiosity.
But, and this is a big but, accumulating this knowledge actually creates a secondary problem.
Right. The inner game.
Yeah. You can build the most powerful, highly tuned intellectual engine in the world, but if the internal steering mechanism is corrupted, you will drive that beautiful engine straight into a brick wall.
Which Naval addresses with a pivot that usually catches business readers completely off guard. He transitions away from the external acquisition of knowledge to intense internal observation.
The text explicitly commands us to meditate on how your own mind works. And it follows it with this terrifying absolute statement. Habit is everything, dictating all our behaviors and ways of thinking.
All is the operative word there. It is a totalizing statement. He doesn't say some behaviors, all of them.
I have to admit, the first time I read this, I was pretty skeptical. I mean, when I'm trying to scale a business or solve a massive problem, sitting cross-legged and watching my thoughts feels like an extreme luxury.
Like a distraction from the actual work.
Exactly. How does meditating on the mind directly translate to entrepreneurial success? It feels very woo-woo.
Well, we really need to strip away the westernized wellness industry baggage associated with the word meditation. Naval is not suggesting you meditate to feel relaxed or to, align your chakras.
Okay, then what is it?
He is prescribing meditation as a ruthless analytical tool for self-observation. It is literally the process of reading your own source code.
Oh, I see. So it's a debugging process.
Exactly. Think about the biological reality of how we move through the world. The human brain is an energy conservation machine. To save energy, it offloads as many decisions as possible to subconscious habit loops.
Right, so we don't have to think about tying our shoes every day.
Yeah, but it applies to complex things too. The way you respond to a critical email from your boss, the way you react to a sudden drop in revenue, the impulse to grab your phone when a task gets slightly difficult. These are not conscious decisions.
They're pre-programmed scripts.
They're scripts executing automatically. So if habit dictates all behavior and you are entirely unaware of your own habits, you are essentially a biological machine running on faulty autopilot.
I can give you a perfect example of this kind of mental malware. A few years ago, I was working on a major project, and every time the work got genuinely difficult, like every time I hit a wall where I needed deep, sustained focus, I would suddenly feel this urgent need to go optimize the fonts on my website.
Oh, classic productive procrastination.
Yes, or I'd reorganize my desk, or check my analytics dashboard for the 5th time. My conscious brain told me, hey, you are being productive, you are doing important business tasks.
But the actual habit loop was totally different.
Completely. The real loop was encounter friction, experience a spike in cortisol, seek immediate relief by doing an easy task. I was sabotaging my own project, and I didn't even realize it because I had never observed the mechanism of my own mind.
And if you extrapolate that exact habit over a 10-year career, the compounding cost is just catastrophic. You will always abandon the most high-leverage, difficult tasks in favor of trivial, dopamine-inducing busy work.
Which means I'd never actually achieve anything of real value.
Right. Naval's argument is that you cannot wield your unique knowledge stack effectively until you patch those subconscious vulnerabilities. Meditation, in this context, is the act of sitting quietly, feeling that spike in cortisol when the brain demands a distraction, and simply watching it happen without acting on it.
You are stepping outside the stream of your own thoughts to observe the current.
Precisely. You are breaking the physical link between the stimulus and the automatic response. You begin to notice, my mind is currently generating anxiety because an investor said no.
And once you observe the anxiety as an object separate from your core self, it loses its dictatorial power over your actions, doesn't it?
Yes. You reclaim agency. You can now consciously choose to deploy your game theory or your persuasion skills rather than blindly reacting out of fear.
This makes the command habit is everything deeply actionable for everyone. If you're listening on your commute right now, think about the very first thing you did when you woke up this morning.
Probably reach for the phone.
Exactly. Did you intentionally choose to look at your phone, or did your hand just automatically reach for it before you're even fully awake? That tiny, seemingly insignificant loop is the exact same underlying mechanism that dictates how you handle a crisis in your career.
If your mind is ruled by unexamined habits, your business will absolutely be ruled by them too.
And once you have debugged that internal operating system, once you have the self-awareness to control your attention, combined with your unique self-taught knowledge, you are finally ready to deploy your effort into the market.
But this is where Naval dismantles another massive societal myth, the myth of hard work.
Yeah, he completely redefines the entire concept of effort. The text states that who you work with and what you work on are vastly more important than how hard you work.
Notice how uncomfortable that idea makes people, though. We have a very deep psychological attachment to the nobility of struggle.
I certainly do. The idea that working 100 hours a week might actually be a mathematical error is a really tough pill to swallow. I mean, my whole life I've been told hard work is the only way.
But Naval separates the exertion of effort from the actual outcome. He's basically saying that effort without direction is just wasted thermal energy.
So to understand the physics of what he's talking about, we have to look at the concept of leverage.
Let's use an analogy here. Hard work, in the traditional sense, is like trying to move a massive boulder by pushing against it with your bare hands.
You can push for 100 hours, you can sweat, you can bleed, you can tear your muscles, you are exerting maximum effort, but the boulder barely moves an inch.
That's the hustle culture model right there. Just push harder.
But leverage is recognizing that pushing the boulder directly is foolish. Leverage is taking the time to design and build a 10-foot steel lever and finding a solid stone to use as a fulcrum.
It requires immense initial effort to build the machine, sure, but once it's in place, you can move the boulder with one hand.
The physical force applied by your hand is multiplied exponentially by the machine. And Naval is arguing that society celebrates the guy bleeding against the boulder when they should really be studying the person building the lever.
Right. What you work on is the fulcrum. Who you work with is the strength of the steel bar. if you are applying 100 hours of effort to a low-leverage task.
Like manually entering data for a company that has zero growth potential, surrounded by toxic coworkers.
Exactly. In that case, your lever is made of wet cardboard. Doesn't matter how hard you push, it just breaks.
This directly ties into Naval's strategy for choosing the right direction, which is basically escaping competition entirely. He says competition is the ultimate destroyer of leverage.
Let me stop you right there, because this contradicts almost every fundamental business textbook out there.
It really does.
We are always taught that competition is market validation. If there are a dozen other coffee shops on the street, it proves people actually want coffee. Are you saying Naval believes you should only build things no one else is doing? Doesn't that risk building something no one actually wants?
It's a crucial distinction he makes. Naval isn't saying you should build a product that defies human desire. He is saying you should fulfill a human desire in a way that is so uniquely tied to your specific DNA, your specific obsessions, and your specific knowledge stack that no one else can possibly copy it.
Ah, I see.
When you compete in a crowded market like opening that 13th coffee shop on the block, you are fighting over a fixed pie. You are forced into a race to the bottom, cutting prices, working longer hours, and eroding your margins just to survive.
You're right back to pushing the boulder.
Exactly. You're sprinting on a treadmill. But how do you escape? Naval argues that no one can compete with you on being you.
Right. Authenticity is the escape velocity.
Yes. If you combine your self-taught understanding of game theory, your deep interest in, 16th century history, and your ability to write code, and you build a highly specific data visualization tool for historians who is your competitor.
There isn't one. You have created a monopoly of one.
You've stepped entirely off the battlefield. Naval often points to people like Joe Rogan as the ultimate example of this. You can't just start a podcast and say, I'm going to beat Joe Rogan at being Joe Rogan. It's physically impossible.
Because he has leaned so heavily into his specific, weird combination of interests: MMA, stand-up comedy, alien conspiracies, and long-form debate. It constitutes a market of one.
Advertisers and audiences have to come to him on his terms because they can't get that exact flavor anywhere else.
And when you're a monopoly of one, you dictate the pricing, you dictate the hours. You have absolute leverage because there is simply no substitute for what you provide.
But having a unique, authentic obsession doesn't automatically generate wealth. I could be the world's foremost expert in something incredibly niche, completely escape competition, and still be totally broke because I'm just sitting in my garage talking to myself.
Right. The potential energy has to be converted into kinetic energy at some point.
So we have to look at Naval's architecture for scale. How do we actually deliver this unique value to the world?
The transition from unique knowledge to actual wealth requires a delivery mechanism. The text lays out a very precise three-step sequence for this.
Okay, let's hear it.
First, you identify an unmet need in society. Second, you are the first mover to provide the solution. Third, and most crucially, you apply permissionless scale.
That phrase, permissionless scale, that is where Naval's framework really feels like a cheat code for the modern era.
It really is.
Yeah.
Because historically, if you wanted leverage, you needed permission from gatekeepers.
If you wanted capital leverage, you had to go pitch investors and literally beg them for money. If you wanted labor leverage, you had to hire 100 employees, manage a massive payroll, and deal with HR. Both of those require other humans to grant you permission to scale your idea.
And they introduce massive, massive friction into the system.
But Naval points out that the internet birthed two completely new forms of leverage that require absolutely zero permission: code and media.
Think about code. If I write a piece of software, I don't need anyone's permission to deploy it. An algorithm can serve 10 users or 10 million users, and the code never asks me for a raise.
It doesn't need to sleep. It doesn't take sick days.
It is a flawless army of robots working in the background 24/7. Code is the ultimate modern lever.
However, and this is a big relief for a lot of people, Naval recognizes that not everyone has the biological aptitude or even the desire to become a software engineer. What is brilliant about his framework is that he elevates media to the exact same level of leverage as code.
Yes. Writing a blog, recording a podcast, creating YouTube videos, or writing a book, these are all forms of permissionless leverage with a marginal cost of reproduction that is practically zero.
Let's really dig into the psychology of this, though, because I think a lot of people hear the advice, start a podcast or write a blog, and they immediately feel this massive wave of imposter syndrome.
Oh, absolutely. I've felt it.
Right. You think, well, the market is saturated. Who cares what I have to say? I don't have an audience.
But that hesitation is the exact reason why most people never achieve leverage. They are applying a localized physical world mindset to an infinite digital landscape.
What do you mean by that?
Okay, in the physical world, if you open a highly niche bookstore and nobody in your small town walks in, you go bankrupt. The friction of geography limits your reach.
You're bound by who can physically drive to your store?
Right. But media operates without geographic friction. If you write a highly specific blog post about, say, the intersection of microeconomics and the psychology of pricing software products using that unique knowledge stack we built earlier, it might only appeal to 0.001% of the population.
Which in a physical town is nobody.
Exactly. But on the internet, that 0.001% is tens of thousands of highly targeted, highly valuable people reading your ideas.
Naval's own career is the perfect case study for this. I mean, yes, he wrote code and built AngelList, but his most explosive leverage came from media.
The famous Twitter thread.
Yes. He sat down and wrote a massive thread on Twitter titled, "How to Get Rich Without Getting Lucky." It was just text. It cost him $0 to produce.
But because it contained his unique synthesis of philosophy and business, it was read by millions and millions of people.
It worked for him while he slept. It attracted founders, investors, and opportunities directly to him. He basically built a global monopoly of one using free text on a social media app.
That is the power of divorcing your time from your output. If you are consulting, you are trading hours for dollars. If you get sick, you don't get paid.
Yeah.
But if you codify your knowledge into media or software, you build an asset that scales infinitely.
You identify the need, you build the unique solution, and you use code or media to distribute it.
Okay, so let's pause and look at the engine we've built so far. It's incredibly powerful. You've curated a unique, multidisciplinary mind. You've meditated to debug the subconscious habits that cause self-sabotage.
You've stepped away from the exhausting, boulder-pushing hustle culture to find your authentic, competition-free niche.
And you've started building permissionless leverage through code or media. You are executing the playbook flawlessly.
But this is precisely where the entire system collapses for the majority of ambitious people.
Really? Why?
The engine is perfect, but the driver's perception of time is fundamentally broken. This brings us to what I consider the most difficult, almost agonizing paradox in Naval's entire philosophy.
The realities of time.
Yeah. The text lays out some harsh realities. The market takes a long time to accept a new product. Human relationships and work-pace collaborations require a long break-in period. Making anything excellent just takes time.
Basically, greatness is inherently slow.
But then Naval hits us with this crazy dichotomy. He says, once you take action, act swiftly, versus be patient with the results, wait for outcomes calmly and composedly.
Speed in action, patience in outcome.
I have to push back hard on this. From a purely biological and psychological standpoint, this feels impossible to execute. If I am acting swiftly, if I am sprinting to write code, launching a product, iterating on a media campaign with fierce intensity, my nervous system is flooded with adrenaline and cortisol.
You're in a high arousal state.
Exactly. You can't just flip a biological switch at 5:00 p.m. and suddenly become a Zen master, completely detached from whether the launch was successful or not. The impatience required to act swiftly bleeds directly into the desire for immediate results. How does Naval actually reconcile this contradiction?
Well, this raises an important question, and he reconciles it by forcing a hard psychological boundary between the micro and the macro.
The micro and the macro.
Okay.
It is intensely difficult, which is exactly why Naval insists that a debugged, observant mind is a prerequisite for wealth. Let's look at the mechanics of failure here to understand it. Why do people burn out? They invert Naval's formula.
Meaning they're slow in the micro and fast in the macro.
Exactly. Consider a typical aspiring entrepreneur. In the micro, their daily actions, they are incredibly sluggish. They spend 3 weeks debating what color their logo should be.
Oh man, I've seen that so many times.
Right. They procrastinate on writing the difficult code by calling it research. They move at a glacial pace because they are fundamentally afraid of friction. But in the macro, they are neurotically impatient.
So the moment they finally launch a half-finished product,
They are checking their analytics every 10 minutes, furious that they haven't achieved $1 million in revenue by Tuesday. They expect the macro universe to bend to their timeline while they completely refuse to sprint in their daily tasks. That is painfully relatable for so many of us. We want the compounding effects of a 10-year game to happen in a week, but we won't even execute today's task with urgency.
and Naval is demanding we flip that completely. In the micro, speed is a weapon against doubt. When you decide to write a blog post, you must write it swiftly. Urgency prevents your mind from creating excuses.
But the moment you hit publish,
The task crosses the boundary from the micro to the macro. The moment it is out of your hands, it is subject to the complex, slow-moving physics of the market.
the market needs time to discover it. Human beings need time to build trust in your brand.
If you apply micro-impatience to a macro process, you will destroy your own leverage. Let's say you launch a brilliant podcast. The micro-execution was flawless, you worked so hard, but because you are impatient for the outcome, you see that only 50 people listened to episode 1.
And if you lack macro patience, you will just declare the project a massive failure and quit.
You will abandon the lever just before it starts to compound. Naval is telling us that true patience isn't just passively waiting around. It is the emotional discipline to tolerate the natural delay of the universe.
You do the work with maximum intensity, and then you completely detach from the result. You find joy in the execution of the craft itself, not the validation of the market. The market will catch up when it catches up.
That is literally the only way to survive the decade it takes to build an overnight success.
And that profound discipline brings us full circle. Because maintaining that exact balance, sprinting wildly in the micro while resting calmly in the macro, is not a strategy you can just read in a book and implement through sheer willpower.
No, it requires a fundamental structural change in your inner operating system.
It brings us right back to Naval's absolute truth. Habit is everything. Your default habit must become the swift, ruthless execution of the task in front of you, and your default emotional habit must become calm detachment from the outcome.
It is a totally integrated philosophy. You really cannot cherry-pick the parts you like.
Right. If you want the massive wealth generated by permissionless leverage, you must develop the unique knowledge stack. To utilize the knowledge stack, you must observe and debug your habits through meditation.
To maximize your effort, you must escape competition by being authentically yourself.
And to survive the journey, you must master the duality of time. Wealth and inner peace are not opposing forces. They are the natural byproducts of a mind that has mastered its own mechanics.
It is a blueprint for thriving in an increasingly noisy, complex world.
It really is. We have covered a massive amount of conceptual ground today, dismantling some deeply ingrained societal myths along the way. We threw out the idea that standardized education is enough, realizing that only a self-taught synthesis of logic, psychology, and game theory creates an unfair advantage.
We looked at the uncomfortable reality that our subconscious habits dictate our destiny, and how meditation is the ultimate debugging tool.
We replace the exhausting, boulder-pushing hustle culture with the concept of the lever, escaping competition by building a monopoly of one. We explored the revolutionary power of permissionless scale through media and code.
And finally, we confronted the biological friction of being fiercely impatient in our daily actions while remaining serenely patient for the long-term outcomes.
And as we wrap up this deep dive into the mind of Naval Ravikant, I want to leave you, the listener, with one final lingering thought to explore on your own. We've established that your internal operating system runs on automatic loops. And as Naval says, habit is everything.
Everything.
So I want you to imagine taking your exact current daily habits, the specific way you handle a difficult email, the speed at which you execute a task, the things you consume on your phone, the way you react to a setback.
Just picture them playing out.
Imagine taking those exact unexamined habits and magnifying them, compounding them every single day for the next 10 years. Given the undeniable trajectory of the habits you practice today, what exact outcome are you currently patiently waiting for? And is it an outcome you actually want to meet a decade from now? Think about it.